It's 101.1 FM, AM 1160, Indiana in the Morning, presented as always by First Commonwealth Bank. And at 7:45, Bob Pollock is here, Penn State Extension. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Hey, Amish out my way have the strawberry signs up. Strawberries are ready in our neighborhood. Are they everywhere else? That's a crop that sometimes comes on in one area but doesn't in another.
That's correct. And depending on how you're growing them will affect that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So
things are starting to slowly happen.
Yeah. That's good.
And the varieties, and depending, the varieties will affect that as well as the growing system they're under. So.
We talked last week about how weather affects strawberries in particular. 479-1160 if you want to give Bob a call this morning, or 349-WCCS. It's 349-9227 if you have a question about your yards, your gardens, your trees, plants, shrubs, all those wonderful things. Garden finally got put in this week.
Well, all right. And this was a year where you could have planted a lot of things earlier than you would have taken the risk to do it.
Yeah.
Just because of being concerned about a freeze. Well, that never happened.
Never got the freeze, but it never got dry enough that we could do it. And so even putting it in this past week, the ground was still very wet. So, but we did manage to get our garden in. I know a bunch of others have theirs in as well. And so we'll be watching those anxiously to see what happens, what comes up, what doesn't. And
for the most part, the soil is warm now, so things should...
Yeah.
Things that are getting planted by seeds, as well as transplants, but seeded crops with moisture in the ground, plus the soil being warmer, things should germinate pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Which is good. It's good to get them in the ground and get things up. If they lay there too long and it's too wet, then we can have rot. The seeds will rot before they come up.
Before they ever sprout.
Shouldn't be a problem at the moment.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, had Shireen Hess in here yesterday, talking about an event coming up Monday that deals with rural internet access. And she mentioned that one of the speakers would be from Penn State Extension.
Yes.
I know that the farm community is very much interested in getting high-speed internet access because it's such an important thing from a business standpoint. I want to talk about that in just a couple of moments, but we do have a call right now.
All right.
So let's see what this caller has on his or her mind. Good morning.
Good. How are you?
Is there going to be a problem with weeds next year if I till that back in soil?
Now, what was the stage of growth of the dandelions, as well as the grasses? Were they going to seed?
They were already gone, actually, probably. They had already, blossomed and moved on.
Okay. Probably not too much of a problem. Of course, it's going to be hard to tell because we always get dandelion seeds blowing in from all over the place, just because they're all around. They're not only in your yard, but in others and along the roadways and the banks and everything. So I guess I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Would I be better off to rake that off of the garden once it's done in the fall and dispose of it, or just till it in?
I think by the time the garden's done later in the year, it'll be gone too, or just about, because it'll decay some over the summer. That mulch will be there, but grass and even broadleafed weeds will break down. They'll start to rot and decay. They may not even make it the whole season.
So go ahead and till them in.
Yes. Essentially,
thank you very much.
Yeah, essentially you've grown a cover crop there.
Yeah.
So you've utilized that, the grass and the broadleafed weeds, all those plants. It's still plant material. So it can be, instead of planting rye, for example, as a cover crop, which is often done, rye grain, then you let it grow and get up there before it goes to seed, and you till it in, and that provides some what we call green manure. or a cover crop manure, and that adds nutrients back in as well as the organic matter, and that's a real important piece of that. Yes, there's nutrients in there, not a lot, but it still helps. It's just like recycling the grass clippings on your lawn.
Yeah.
That by just mowing it and leaving the clippings there, as long as they're not in big clumps and all that. But if you mow it regularly enough, those clippings going back, we're recycling them, and so we gain some nutrients, and you can reduce the amount of nitrogen you need to apply to the yard because you're recycling.
Yeah. You can cultivate that
back on.
Cultivate that stuff back in, and it becomes at the very least a science experiment. So he knows whether he should do it again next year.
See, he can see if he has an increase in dandelion population next year.
Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to ask you about internet technology, broadband, and how it applies to farmers. I gave an example yesterday when Shireen was here of a farmer's round baler, and the computer went bad in the round baler. And it was telling the wrapper to wrap it before the bale was completely baled up. And so the computer had to be reprogrammed. With broadband, you could do that remotely. You don't have to have a technician come out and do that. That was my example, but I'm sure there are other examples where broadband helps the farming industry.
Well, just having access to markets, keeping track of where the markets are every day, having access to your suppliers, and they having access to you. So it's a buyer seller, and sometimes you're the buyer, sometimes you're the seller. But having that access back and forth with your suppliers, so that if you need parts, something breaks down and you need parts.
You don't have to stop the whole operation, drive into the house, and get all of that done. You can just wirelessly pull out the phone and click, click, click.
Order it.
It's ordered.
And it's sent, and it's on the way. And it may be driven to you and dropped off, depending on the part, or it may be shipped, and next day shipping. So they're just all kind of data management. A lot more, the farm equipment, tractors and running off satellites and real-time information from when you're harvesting the crop to looking for pests. There's a lot of predictive things that are going on now. Weather stations, weather data. That's a biggie. We have some farms, especially orchards, fruit producers, are putting weather stations right on their own farm so they can get real-time local information that they need, and that's linked in to a network, actually. So we have, within Pennsylvania, we have a license with the NEWA, N-E-W-A, and it's run out of Cornell University. But so producers here in Pennsylvania that have those weather stations and are linked in, we have a subscription statewide, so that people can access that NEWA information from where people are.
I want to get to this caller this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a question for Bob. It has nothing to do with spring planting. It's a holly bush that I have in front of my house that is really getting overgrown, and I wanted to know if I could trim that back right now without the bush being not productive, or what I could do with it.
Yeah, so it's probably already put on a flush of growth or in the process of doing that now.
Yes.
How tall is it?
Oh, it's not a tall. It's just a bush.
Oh, okay. So it's more of a rounded...
Not quite even 3 feet tall. It's just a complete bush that keeps bushing out, and it's got taken over a good bit of my front here.
Okay. So, yes, so those can be trimmed back pretty much as needed. Try to keep, if you do a little bit at a time, then you can snip off some of that newer growth and try to maintain the size so that you'll still have foliage on there.
Yes.
That's the best way to do that.
All right.
So if you can just go back in a little bit to where you still have foliage on a branch, and then clip it there, and that'll help maintain that size. That'll control the growth.
Now, if old growth has caused it to become a little bit bigger than she wants, can she
Yes.
take off another layer?
Depending on the holly, you can go back in there. I would not go back in too far past so that you have just a bare stick sticking out.
All right.
Just go back as far as where you've got foliage and snip it there.
Okay, that's okay.
Now,
then.
sometimes you can go in, if it's too dense, you can go in and maybe remove a whole branch back to the main stem of the plant.
Yes, it is becoming that too.
Yeah,
kind
so
of
that
dense, you know.
so just opening up some holes in there to let a little bit more light in will be helpful too, because that can stimulate the plant to make some new branches, which can replace some of that, as well as keep it a nicer, fuller shrub. And it'll hold more foliage when there's more light. Sometimes when we shear plants and we just go in with the hedge clippers or the hedge shears and clip them back really tight all the time, we get a layer maybe an inch or two thick, and that's all the foliage that's on that plant because we've just keep shearing it off.
All right.
And so and then it gets really dense, and then if you kind of spread those branches and look inside the plant, there's nothing in there because it's too dark and nothing can grow. So just opening it up a little bit can be helpful.
All righty. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting question because at some point, these plants do get much bigger than we wanted them to become, and to get them back to where we really envision that plant being for us sometimes makes for a painful season or two.
Yeah, yes.
And
some plants are more responsive to that than others. Some plants, if you prune them back into just blind wood, then they don't have buds back in there that can open back up again and create new foliage. And then you've just got a branch, and that's it. So it's much better to just kind of keep after that on an annual basis if necessary, just to keep things in check and not let them get too big.
Yeah.
And then have to deal with really whacking them back a lot.
He is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. Thank
A
you.
lovely day today and weekend. It's Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank here on WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.